She looks metallic. Metallic, metallic, metallic.
Though I can't quite recall overnight sensation.
Welcome to the shop, and in this episode we sell out to Disney because there is no limit to how much you can compromise your product for those sweet dollary dues. And the shilling is so pervasive that as a result, we are left with the most lackluster episode of the season, effectively plunging one of the best seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race into nosediving territory. There is really not much going on in this filler episode. Instead of Snatch Game, we have a terrible acting challenge, a ton of time traveling to support the plot, we find out more about Jen and their villain Edit, and we move forward with Kylie's and Raja's storyline. Then we're going to be discussing the Cryptiques, as usual, find back some sanity from the load of inconsistent crap that the judges fed us this week, and of course by the end, the confessional chart and the speculation. Beaver was waiting for years for Disney to buy Viacom. They just bought Fox. Good God, give them a rest. They just bought Fox. And Viacom just merged with Paramount. You know, if you speak Portuguese. Now, before we begin, if you like what we do, please take a moment to leave a comment, give the video a like, and possibly even share it, because that really is the best way to ensure that YouTube starts suggesting our content to new viewers who really have no idea that a review show like this actually exists. So it would be a great help for the channel. Thank you so much. And if you're a new subscriber, then a warm welcome to the channel. Now, the episode starts and we are back in the workroom. This is episode 5, day 2 of filming. And we are counting lipsticks. And we find out that Jen and Akeria had the same number on votes. So Jen is so pissed that she teleports through time and space to voice her disappointment. Meet Pimple on the Nose Jen. That iteration of Jen that was used in episode 4 to make Jen look like she threw Akeria under the bus, in episode 5 to look like she was a disingenuous villain who would relentlessly attack Scarlet, literally split seconds after crying basically on cue. And then in here as well to look pissed. And of course, in episode 6 day 2, during the voting segment, to shit a little bit more on Akeria.
I have half the vote. When I just won a challenge and I've been doing well.
I know what's the question on everybody's mind. Where does Pimple on the Nose Jen actually come from? Well, she comes from a faraway future. Her words are mostly taken out of context to push storylines. I have no idea why Jen would actually sit there and refilm those things, but I'm open to suggestions because I have no idea. It blows my mind that she did this. Of course, Pimple on the Nose Jen has no trace of any pimple on her upper lip. So, if we learned anything from Dr. Pimple Popper is that skin lesions cannot really heal that well in half a day and then magically reappear the day after. So, of course, I also checked this confessional under different lights because sometimes concealer can actually make a pimple invisible, but it's not there. It's nothing. It's perfect skin. So, Pimple on the Nose Jen comes from a very far away future. And as confirmation, we can see Jen in the workroom back in episode 5 day 1 sporting a nice pimple on the upper lip, and Jen in the workroom during episode 6 day 1 sporting the same nice pimple on the lip. Why is it so important to trace down where this confession is coming from? Because she has been used through 3 different episodes already to push storylines and make Jen look completely like shit. So it's important to realize that her words are taken out of context for the worst possible purpose. Now, after a temporal incursion from Pimple on the Nose Jen, meet Big Pimple on the lip Jen. And she is here to be really, really pissed. Jen is so pissed in this confessional that she looks triggered. This cannot be acting.
I was expecting maybe 1 or 2 lipsticks for me. I wasn't expecting 4. Really blows my mind. It really bothers me.
And by tracing Pimple, I think that we can be pretty sure that this confessional comes from episode 5, day 2, or at most episode 6, day 1, in a skipped confessional. This comes from episode 6, day 1. So you can see that those pimples are all in the exact same position. So there is no doubt anymore. And I'm telling you this because last episode we speculated that she might have been coming from episode 4. And that was an incorrect assumption because she is definitely coming from this time frame. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you should watch the episode 5 of The Chop because I spent a ton of time describing all of these confessionals and how they merge together. Now, Big Pimple on the lip Jen with razor burn on the neck is the Jen that was crying back in episode 5. But here I want you to focus on the fact that she also appeared in episode 4 and she was quoting the events of episode 4. So this means that at some point any queens can sit to record confessionals and the producers will ask them questions about past episodes. So this makes our job a little bit more difficult, but don't worry, we are prepared. While the queen discuss, we find out a couple of things. Number one is that Jen is still fixated on the judges' feedback from episode 3, when they told her to bring the funk, bring the humanity, and the fact that using that feedback she was able to win a challenge. And number two, that she really has no idea when her energy is too high. So she started asking everyone if they thought she was at 110% during the challenge, and everyone says yes. So they tell her, just be normal, Jen, just be normal. The problem is that for Jen, normal is what we understand as too high energy. So it's going to be interesting going forward. It's a new day in the workroom, and Ru comes in to announce the Maxi challenge, which is Rumerican Horror Story, an acting challenge where the producers basically created the roles, wrote the script, and at least the queens gets to assign those roles. Now, do you remember back in episode 3 when I told you that there is a difference between an acting challenge that is stupid and an acting challenge that's idiotic? Stupid is like an exaggerated kind of comedy, it's something that you camp it up, everyone is on the joke, and it requires a good concept, the reference must, fit the situation, you have to have comedic timing. It's something in which you put a ton of effort because you have to understand, good comedy is difficult. Of course, these are all talented queens, so they make it look like it's effortless, but I can assure you it's really difficult. While idiotic is something that requires the audience to actually be brain damaged, to be enjoyed whatever they're being served. It's something that has no real concept, where the script is wrote without any kind of effort whatsoever by people who have zero sense of comedy. You have references thrown in there that made absolutely no sense. The characters are not developed. This challenge is idiotic. And I'm going to expand a little bit more on that later. But for the moment, I can't help but thinking that something doesn't smell quite right about this challenge, because it's going to end up so lackluster and poorly written that it kind of looks less like our usual campy self-referential challenge and more like a 10 minutes of fucking advertisement for American Horror Story. Oh, and by the way, don't miss a whole new season of American Horror Story starting August 25th, only on FX. I wonder who owns FX. I think it's Disney, isn't it? Oh yes, it's Disney. Didn't Disney advertise already once on RuPaul's Drag Race? Sorry, did I say advertise? I meant license their content. If you're thinking of season 12, you are completely right. Do you remember this episode? In season 12, we had this episode with the Frozen Eleganza runway, where of course Ru took care to remind us that the runway was inspired by the Broadway musical of Frozen.
And tonight on the runway, inspired by the Broadway musical, category is Frozen Eleganza. Inspired by the Broadway musical, category is Frozen Eleganza.
This is the episode where the lip-sync song was Let It Go, the version from the Broadway musical of Frozen. Also, the only episode where Redacted was conveniently edited out from the runway. I wonder why, but I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Which runway, you ask? Well, of course it's the Frozen Eleganza runway, inspired by the Broadway musical of Frozen. And I'll say Frozen again, just, in case you forget. The Broadway musical, of course. So, something starts to smell fishy already. We will count this as strike one and see if we get some more hints going forward. What do you think? So, the queens go to the sofa. They have some minor disagreement about which queen gets which role, but in the end, they all agree that Jen was typecast. Immediately after, we have a triple mismatch confessional from Akeria, because you have to understand, she has to look overly confident, so that when she fucks up during rehearsal, you will notice that even more.
Listen, the secret to the sauce is to do what you know. I believe in ghosts, I believe in spirits, I believe in voodoo, I believe in witchcraft. I can do this,
She will be teleported through time and space as well in order to push the plot along. And she's not the only one, because we also find out that unfortunately poor Raja got trapped in the mirror universe. But on the bright side, it didn't really interfere with her ability to time travel from the past, because Raja from the left comes from this episode, but Raja from the right comes from episode 1, day 1. So she's taking a huge time leap, and they are both here to prime you on the fact that Raja's problem in this challenge is going to be her characterization.
In the past, I've struggled in acting challenges. Not only am I the legitimate queen of Draganda, I'm also legitimately hotter. So I'm gonna have to work hard on the character that I'm able to create and develop.
Nothing happens by chance of RuPaul's Drag Race. Nothing. Immediately after this sequence of random events, we move on to the big screen, because Angela Bassett is here to help our queens. And she's one of the shining stars of American Horror Stories. And of course, it makes sense that she is here, because after all, this challenge is inspires, quote, by American Horror Story. However, this is kind of the second coincidence, so I'm kind of starting to see a little bit of a pattern in here, don't you think? The queens are extremely excited to see her, except for Eureka. She looks like she's busy checking something out and doesn't even realize that something is going on until she hears everyone screaming.
Hi guys! Hi guys!
That's ridiculous. But this was really gaggy. So, the queens have a nice talk, Angela is delightful of course, but I cannot help but thinking that there is something really fishy going on in here. Now that I think about it, the queens looked really excited in their confessionals, a little bit too excited. Especially Eureka, Trinity and Raja, so why don't we take a look back and see if we get any hints. Meet wavy hair Eureka. And Eureka I never told you about before because it was not relevant, but of course I noticed that she had temporal incursions in episode 4, episode 5, and now also in episode 6.
Alright, I'm impressed so far. Here we go.
Miss Thing, girl.
4, 5, 6. Yeah.
Should the rest of us just go home? I mean, can we get her to just stunt double for everybody? You can be with us.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm extremely happy with my team because all three of us have unique points of view and we love to talk. So, honey, these kids in here are gonna gag when me, Trinity, and Akeria slay this challenge.
Word.
What? The kids are gagged.
In all of these incursions, she directly references the events of the current episode. So you know that this confessional is coming from the future again. How far away? I don't know, ask Jen. And on the right, we have what I like to call the There's Something About Mary Eureka. She seems to belong to episode 6, day 1. It's funny to think that somehow Eureka had to be teleported and have a mismatched confessional in order to look excited to meet Angela. And she's not the only one, because of course we have a temporal incursion from Trinity, a double temporal incursion from Trinity in a mismatched confessional. I mean, it doesn't get better than this. So we have pink-haired Trinity, who has incursions in episode 3, 5, and 6.
Thank you. Look, let me tell you, I am a sensitive soul. If anybody know me, I am easily frazzled. But it's also not a bad thing. I ain't apologizing. Let me feel my emotions.
And anybody who's ever been around me can see that I'm not shy.
Right.
Bitch, I live.
I'm here for it. You go, Miss Kylie. Miss Kylie, you go. Child, Angela Bassett is on this screen. Then, this is Hollywood royalty, and she looked like a coin. She looked like a coin.
So, she is another Time Lord. Welcome to the club. Just join Eureka and Jen. And on the right, we have Trinity time traveling from episode 3, day 2.
Bitch, give a little girl some praise. But immediately they came in pleading their case.
And of course, how can we forget Raja? Raja on the left is coming from episode 1, day 2. Do you remember episode 1, day 2? Do you remember which challenge was in there? It was the talent show.
Ginger men, girl, you didn't save me. No jelly beans, no gummy bears, no nothing. What's up, girl? I couldn't get none. Yes, ma'am. Come through. Angela Bassett. Come through. Angela Bassett. Black excellence, okay?
She was saying, yes ma'am, come through to one of the girls in the talent. But of course, she needed to be teleported here to look as if she was referring to Angela. Raja on the right, I wasn't being able to find out where she belongs yet. Nevertheless, off camera you hear her say black, and then the tone changes and her camera says excellence, referring to Angela, which she is. Nobody is doubting that. But why did these queens need to teleport through time and space to look so overly excited? Just excited wasn't good enough? Because I am sure that they were. I mean, who wouldn't? It almost looks as if Angela was there to represent a product. And, you know, by virtue of association, any excessive praise for her automatically translate to excessive praise for the product. And I'm asking you, do you know any kind of media that is known for overly excessive praise? Because I think that's the exact definition of advertisement, isn't it? So, this is strike 3, and we are not even remotely done yet. After this, we move to rehearsal because we need to take a little bit of a shit on Raja and Akeria, because by the end of the episode they both need to be on the bottom so that everybody will agree that Akeria is the one that goes sent home. What happened with Jara doesn't need to happen anymore, at least from a producer's perspective, of course. So there is a big difference in the way these two queens are treated during rehearsal. They shit on both of them, but in very different ways. While the judges shit all the way on Raja characterization, of course, not only they sound more patronizing as usual, but they are relentlessly attacking the way Raja has decided to portray her character. But you know, somehow we gotta take her down a little bit, because otherwise people will not buy the fact that she will need to be on the bottom. But, and that's a big but, Raja is allowed to appear in a confessional to defend her characterization. And this is really important, because you, the audience, need to be convinced that Raja is just doing bad in this challenge, not that she is a villain or that she really deserves to go home. And that's extremely different from what happens to Akeria, because Akeria receives a ton of corrections for her acting. Michelle looks pissed, and instead of Akeria, we have a confessional from Ginger, who is time traveling to tell us that Akeria's best, unfortunately, is not enough. And you might ask, where is traveling from? I will tell you next episode. For now, we move on to Kylie. We see Kylie fucking up big time. How big, you ask? Well, for 45 minutes, at least according to Trinity. And the tea that she spilled during the Roscoe's viewing party. So the editors really want you to notice that Kylie is doing bad. We have pink hair Trinity traveling from the future to tell us that what's going on is not good. We have Ginger summoned in a mismatched confessional while time traveling at the same time. And of course, Michelle gets on stage to show Kylie how it's done. And I'm like, this is clearly Michelle's moment. And no one can convince me that it was not going to happen no matter what. No matter who got that role, no matter how good they were, it was going to happen. She probably rehearsed extensively and days in advance for this moment. This was her moment. At this point, you might be thinking, well, Kylie is going to be in the bottom, because usually when queens are shown getting constant directions, constant feedback, they will be in the bottom, and they went in really hard to show Kylie fucking up. But, you know, this is a mini redemption storyline for Kylie. So the more you see her fucking up, the more effective her win will be by contrast. So at this point, we are back in the workroom, where we have another temporal incursion from wavy hair Eureka to tell us that she is a sex magnet. And I'm like, yes. Now, this is not the most important thing that happens in here. The most important thing is that we are talking about spirits. Instead of talking about the challenge, you know, opening up, every mirror moment, uplift each other, you know, like we are used to. The mirror moments are something that even the queens know that it exists. It's like a pivotal moment in RuPaul's Drag Race. But instead of all of that, somehow the queens start discussing spirits. And that's a very curious topic, very in line with the Maxi advertisement for this episode. I'm really wondering which field producer suggested Kylie to introduce this very specific and out of place topic. Sorry, did I say Maxi advertisement? I meant Maxi challenge, of course. And this is strike 4. In addition to that, we find out that Akeria wants to open a funeral home. This is her mirror moment. And I mean, I stand. How can I not? Moving on to the main stage, and Emma Roberts is here, another leading actress from American Horror Story, and she's here as a guest judge, which I'm sure has nothing to do with the compulsory promotional appearances that are so fashionable in today's entertainment contracts, you know? It's just a coincidence. The 5th one, but, you know, still just a coincidence. So, you know, at this point I'm thinking, boy oh boy, Drag Race really is an incredible place, you know, full of random events that just by sheer coincidence happen to align in such a way as to kind of make it look like World of Wonder sold out every little bit of integrity that's left in the show. For money. What a great message. I mean, who needs friends, family, equality, or even integrity when you have money? I know RuPaul would understand. Perfectly understand what I'm talking about. Maybe Disney arrived and said, of course, I have to say it, hypothetical scenario. Maybe Disney arrived and said, listen, we would like to advertise on your show, but not really advertise because, you know, it doesn't really look good. You know, make it look classy. And everybody thinks, you know, it's just normal. They just digest everything together without realizing that they're being fucking bombarded with advertisement, disguised as entertainment. We can call it Entertisement. Ryan, make it look subtle. Yes. Yes, the key word is plausible deniability. So, let's review this 10 minutes of Maxi challenge disguised as advertisement, wink wink. For me, the whole thing was painful to watch, and it kind of felt like it would never end. I almost fell asleep a couple of times. The script is terrible. The characters are so poorly written that they don't even qualify as an afterthought. And the whole thing desperately tries to somewhat integrate RuPaul's Drag Race into the storyline of one of the most iconic seasons of American Horror Story, and just fails miserably and in the worst possible way. But I have to say something in favor of the queens, because even experienced actors have real trouble in delivering convincing performances if the script is garbage. So you know that going into this, the queens had absolutely no chance, despite trying their best, and all of them did genuinely try their best. But if the script is garbage, there is like very little that you can do about it. So you have this Drag Race references thrown randomly in there, as if quoting Alyssa Edwards, Willem, or RuPaul's song will definitely be enough to, you know, effectively disguise this thing as a challenge instead of the paid advertisement it most probably was. There are constant references to American Horror Story that are so pervasive that the whole segment really looks like a strange episode of American Horror Story that is trying to reference RuPaul's Drag Race and not the opposite. And that is strike 6. The whole thing to me made absolutely no sense. There are times in which she's trying to go for a dramatic tone, but there is no drama. Then there are times in which she tries to be funny, but it's just sad. The editing is lackluster, the set is cheap, the tone is ambivalent, and the script, I mean, I cannot even get started on the script. It was just bullshit.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit. That's bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit.
That's a joke.
Every fucking time.
I was being realistic.
Realistic with bullshit? Girl, bullshit. You are a fucking liar.
So there's nothing even remotely entertaining in this. It's not even enjoyable as a train wreck. It's just garbage. And, you know, it's doing a huge disservice to the fans and especially to the queens. Because you know that they put their career on the line to appear on All Stars and they had to go through this. So let that sink in for a moment. Personally, I feel like I got stupider just by watching this. And it was 10 minutes. Imagine being there for a whole day. I mean, I understand getting those sweet coins. I mean, who doesn't like money? Of course, World of Wonder is a business, they love money, but how far are you willing to compromise your product in order to maximize profits? And is it even sustainable in the long term? Because if you keep serving this shit over and over and over, you know what people will do? People will be like, oh, I'm not watching this. I'm not watching it. I'm not subscribing to Paramount Plus. You know what? I'll watch the reviews. I will wait. Then maybe, if I'm really curious, I will subscribe for 1 month. In 3 months, binge watch the whole thing and then show you the middle finger. This is what people do. Because you cannot continuously serve this garbage. This company is getting literally hundreds of millions of dollars. How the hell can you not afford to hire writers? Or to say no when companies come to you and say, wink wink, would you like to license our content for a parody challenge? I mean, oh, for God's sake. Moving on. For me, the most committed were Ginger and Pandora. Under Ginger and Pandora, probably Jen, Eureka and Raja, all on the same level. They did a decent job for me. I thought that Raja had the best characterization. Sue me. Jen was clearly typecast, and to me, she didn't really have a characterization for her character. It was Jen. It was a character written for Jen to be Jen. So she didn't really make up a character. That's my point. And Eureka was only partially in character. I could see moments in which she was really shining, despite the bad script, the bad set, the bad tone, the bad editing. But half of the time she was just Eureka. Everyone else, there is no way to know. I think that no one really deserved to be in the bottom for this thing. Really. No one. Moving on to the Cryptiques. We are on the main stage. Trinity and Pandora are safe. We have Ginger. To Ginger, for her runway, they tell her that it was really fun, whatever it means, of course. It's kitschy, it's campy, and it's gingery, which tells us nothing about what in the outfit actually contributes to those ideas or why. So it's not a feedback, it's not a critique, it's just an opinion. Personally, I liked the runway. I thought it was fun, I thought it was kitschy, I thought it was gingery. Now listen. To me, she looked like this 18th century widow. It's really nothing to gag on, but it was okay. It kind of reads as gothic, but, you know, maybe my idea of gothic doesn't really align with what is actually considered to be a goth outfit. For the challenge, they told her that she stole the scene because she knew where the camera was. And I was like, what the fuck? She stole the scene because she knew where the camera was? That's some new level of bullshit, isn't it? Anyway, she was amazing. Her physical comedy was amazing, and that's it. That's her feedback for the challenge. God forbid that we give her actual credit for being the most committed one in the bunch, because of course she doesn't have to win. This is not her moment, it's someone else's moment. So we're going to keep it at that. Next up we have Eureka. For the runway, she did a great job. That's it. Seriously, that's it. Nothing else. For the challenge, Emma loved her energy. She was so present, which I don't know if it's like a serious critique or a fat joke. She is not afraid to go for it, which is another way of saying nothing while opening your mouth. And she was one note and repetitive. Ouch. Moving on to Raja, her runway. Ru says, this is so beautiful. Michelle, this is goth and beautiful and classically gorgeous. I mean, she looked amazing. I love that wig. The makeup is stunning. It's just fantastic. But is it goth? And this is a serious question. Is it goth? Because to me, which I am a common nobody, so, you know, I am the average viewer of RuPaul's Drag Race, to me this doesn't read as goth. It's beautiful, but it doesn't read as goth. For the challenge, they said that she had good chemistry with Trinity, but her characterization wasn't working for Ross and Michelle, and she wasn't really taking directions. Somehow I have the feeling that if she did take direction, then they would have found something else to complain about. Now, you might like her characterization, you might dislike it, but I think we can all agree on the fact that there was a characterization. So at least she should be praised for that, because a lot of other queens didn't bring any kind of characterization. But this is beside the point. The point is she has to be in the bottom. The point is whoever is in the bottom with her needs to go home. And who else has to be in the bottom? Akeria, of course. So to Akeria they tell her that she looks gorgeous, the dress is intricate, she looks sharp but delicate. And this is a pretty good critique. Still, not what I would call quality feedback, but we are on the right track. Personally, this was one of my favorite outfits, and this reads goth to me. For the challenge, they say that she had good moments, but she was monotone. Oh, really? And Ru said, there were no nuances to your character. It felt underdeveloped. And I'm like, yes, of course, but were those nuances in the script? Come on, let's not bullshit each other. Her character had no nuances. It was poorly written, and she's not even an actress, so you really double down on her. Sometimes I'm left puzzled, because I love the way that Ru can say the worst shit with a straight face. But on the other hand, I still get a little bit triggered by the kind of shit that she says, so I'm still trying to find balance. It's a struggle. It really is a struggle. Now, moving on to Jen. Jen's runway was costumey, but glamorous. And that's it. Nothing else. Now, her runway was not my favorite, but it was very close to my favorite, because this reads goth to me. You know, when she came out with these contact lenses, the first thought that I had is she looks like she's kind of ready to audition for Dragula. Not participate, but at least audition. For the challenge, they say that she was born to play that role. Really? In other words, we could also say that that role was born to be played by her. Then she did right in going in 110% for this role. It was so fun. Michelle was proud of her. Ross thinks that she did great. She hit that sweet spot, and he loved her singing. Now, to me, I told you already, there was very little characterization. Jen was conveniently typecast in the role, and all of this, it's quite convenient. But this is a convenient episode after all. I'm kind of wondering if they are rewarding her right now, because she was successfully triggered the episode before. Do you remember the recipe for the perfect villain? So I'm kind of wondering if the next episode she will be triggered again, but we will have to wait and see. I think she's going to be getting it big time next episode. Be prepared. And last but not least, Kylie. For the runway, Michelle said, wearing subtle fishnets underneath the garment is absolutely stunning. Wait, what? Wearing subtle fishnets underneath the garment is absolutely stunning. Whatever that means, okay, I'll take it. Nothing else, just this observation, because I guess we have to keep it cute, because Kylie has to win, and we cannot really talk about the fact that her outfits reads more like dominatrix than actually goth. You know, she looks beautiful, hands down. That outfit is fantastic. I love everything about it. It's just beautiful. But is it goth? To me, it looks like she's hiding a whip somewhere and telling me that I'm not being a good boy. That's what she looks like. Can I say that? Okay, forget about that. Moving on to the challenge. First, it wasn't good, but it took some feedback from Ross and Michelle to become really great. And at this point, Ross disagrees because Kylie got herself there, not Michelle and Ross. Ooh, shocker. So, Rue says that Kylie has a captivating energy, she has star quality, and she can't take her eyes off of her, which I completely agree, but has nothing to do with this challenge. Kylie really did her best, but in the end the result was mediocre at best. Kylie is not an actress. Why forcing this win for something that Kylie is not really good at? Why can't we ever shine in something that she actually excels at, like dancing and singing? Because when you push someone for no real reason, you're not only betraying their talent, you are betraying the spirit of the competition, and ultimately you are betraying us, the viewers. So I am happy for Kylie that she actually got a win, because it means that she actually has a chance to go to that top 4, maybe even win. But it doesn't feel earned. That's the problem. It doesn't feel earned. And I feel that many viewers will look at this challenge and look at this win and thinking, oh, she doesn't really deserve it. Whatever happens to her during the competition, she will not deserve it because she's being favored. And they are right, she is being favored, but that has nothing to do with how much she deserves it. That's the point that I wanted to make. So, by the end of the Cryptiques, Kylie is the winner. Ginger, Eureka, and Jen are high, and of course Akeria and Raja are in the bottom. So at this point you are 100% sure that Akeria is going to go home. So let's go back to the workroom for Untucked and Deliberation. Now, Untucked, there's really not much going on, except that we get more screen time for Pandora. And this is the real shocker of the episode. Pandora actually got screen time, sharing her scene with only one other queen. Tukia, before I watched this episode Untucked, I didn't know that Pandora was on this season. Me neither. So we go back to the workroom with the other queens for deliberation. And at this moment we find out more about Raja's storyline. Instead of pleading her case to the queens, Raja starts talking about her friendship with Akeria, about their experiences on Drag Race, and this whole segment ended up edited in a way that it really feels more like a storyline exposition than a genuine struggle. I am sure that the struggle was there, I'm not saying it wasn't there, but the way it was edited, it really looked like exposition, like saying, oh look, we are moving Raja's storyline a little bit further. Of course we have all the queens in full front reacting empathically to Raja. We have a throwback to season 11, and on top of that we also have a confessional from Raja. So at this point everyone knows that Akeria will go home. Raja knows it, Akeria knows it, all the queens knows it. And this is not the only moment for Raja, because this Untucked is basically all about Raja, because at some point she has her talk with Kylie, and here she has another chance to show her growth, talking about her different attitude toward being in the bottom, because back in season 11 she was angry and she is not anymore. Right now she is not angry and she is not upset. Instead she feels empowered. At the end, of course, we have a nice mismatched confessional to tie everything together, and her storyline moves forward in a full circle, because back in season 11 Akeria sent her home, and now she is going to be the one sending Akeria home. Now, at the end of this segment, and before we actually move on to the lip sync, there is still a little bit of time to shit on Jan. Ooh, there's always time to take a little bit of a dump on Jan. We have Akeria coming in a confessional saying, I don't know who put a spell on me. Who put a spell on you, Akeria? And immediately after, we have this image of Jan with the shady noise.
Listen, I don't know who put a hoodoo voodoo spell on me to get me about this competition.
Of course, there's always time to shit on Jan. And while voting, of course, we have another temporal incursion from our pimple on the nose, Jan, telling us that the answer is clear. I wonder what was the question. Oh, good God. You know something terrible is going to happen to Jan next episode, and I'm not sure that I'm ready for that. I am not sure. So we move back to the main stage where we find out that Manila Luzon is the lip sync assassin for this episode. And we're finally going to see Kylie lip sync for the first time since season 2. If you watched season 2, you know that her performance with Morgan was absolutely legendary. It's one of my favorite lip syncs of all time because it's really rare to have two queens on stage absolutely killing it. And you remember that viral video that showed Sonique lip syncing and interacting, emphasis on interacting with a fan on stage. The queens lip sync, and you know that Kylie is a lip sync assassin. So the moment we found out that the song is from Christina Aguilera, you know that Manila will be absolutely obliterated. Kylie's performance was great for me, although I must admit that I'm pretty tired myself of all these close-up single shots that we're starting to get in the lip syncs. A lot of people pointed that out already, and I'm totally on board with it. It's a lip sync between two queens. I want to see two queens most of the time. It doesn't have to be all of the time, but most of the time I want to see both of them. I want to see how they are moving on the stage. I want to see if they are interacting with each other. I'm tired of close-ups. This is the kind of images that we want to see, both of them. It's also easier to compare them. But you know, if it's easier to compare them, it becomes more difficult to manipulate the outcome. And that's probably why we are getting so many close-ups. By the end of the lip sync, Manila was found dead on the edge of the main stage. Because Kylie wins, she absolutely killed the performance, and she sends Akeria home. And you cannot say that Akeria doesn't have class. She left the stage with grace, with a lot of grace and a lot of dignity. So good for her. I hope that she will get to raise her bookings because of coming to All Stars. I hope she gained more followers. She deserved them. She still doesn't do it for me, really, but she does it a little bit more since I saw her on All Stars. So, good job. Okay. Now, moving on to the confessional chart and the speculations. If you don't want any possible spoilers, this is the moment you should absolutely leave the review. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. This is the confessional chart for this episode. As you noticed, Akeria got a ton of confessional time. And this for me was somehow unexpected, because back in episode 4 I told you, it's kind of strange that Akeria got so much confessional time, but Jara is the one who just went home. And she didn't get a lot of confessional times. If you look back at every episode of All Stars, the moment they go home, immediately they have a spike in confessionals, because, you know, that's their last chance to make an impression. It's a nice thing that the producers and the editor actually do, so that the queens gets to appear a little bit more, you know, she gets highlighted in the episodes in which she goes home. So my speculation was, okay, maybe they gave Akeria more confessional time in episode 4, so that when she will actually go home, we can save up on that confessional time and give it to somebody else to highlight them. But the problem is that this episode she goes home and she has a ton of confessional time. So why the hell did Jara get so little confessional time back in episode 4? And at this point I'm thinking the only logical conclusion in all of this is that somehow they might have wanted to make Jara a disservice, which gives even more credibility to her claims that she did during the Roscoe's viewing party. I'm just saying. Let's look at the queens that we have left. Jen is the only one with negative confessionals. These are the temporal incursions that she actually had at the beginning of the episode, which was still episode 5 day 2. Let's not forget that. So Raja is the queen with the most confessional time. To me, she takes the spot as the black queen not portrayed as a villain. Now, when I talk about representation spots, it's not my opinion. I am putting myself from the point of view of the producers and from the point of view of the marketing department at Viacom CBS or World of Wonder, or possibly both. Okay, that's the language in which we're in. Because I had a couple of comments say, oh, you're saying that and it means no, it's not It's not like that. So for me, she takes the representation spot for the Queen of Color not portrayed as a villain. A redemption storyline was very well executed, and it's still going strong with this episode obligatory bottom placement against her closest sister. The storyline was developed even more in this episode. She actually had a chance to showcase a totally new attitude toward being in the bottom, which is really a sharp contrast compared to what we've seen back in season 11. In addition, this episode really closes the circle and cements her status as a redeemed villain. Based on all of this, to me, at this point, there is no chance that she will not be in the top 4. She will definitely be in the top 4. For me, it's 99.99% at this point. Next up, we have Ginger. Ginger has a good amount of confessional times this episode as well, and she is the most professional big girl in there. For me, she takes the representation spot as the big girl. And at this point, I would even go as far as calling her the winner of All-Star 6. Her edit is simply stellar, especially in the subtext. She is professional, she's empathic, she's a good listener, she's a fair player, and please take note of one thing. Her professional attitude is different from that edit that we usually get on Drag Race that I call the professional edit. Don't confuse the two things. It's two very different things. The professional edit is given to those queens who cannot really be triggered, that do well in everything without really jumping off the screen, and are constantly critiqued for refusing to get their hands dirty. They are professionals with regards to their performance on Drag Race, like Rosé, Cameron Michaels, Asia O'Hara, and so on and so forth. Ginger is professional in a different way, because she is a professional toward production. She will, and she did already, get her hands dirty for the production, all the while looking natural and unaware. And that's a tough trick to learn, and a very valuable asset, especially long term. I would go as far as saying she has the best chance of winning this. Now, Kylie is the third queen that is still in the competition that had the most confessional time in this episode. She had a very effective edit with this mini redemption that was really pushed during rehearsal, it was pushed in the Cryptiques, and it really climaxed in the Lipsync for Your Legacy. For me, she's going to be our silent assassin. And if you don't know what a silent assassin is, it's a kind of edit in which you have a queen who will eventually end up in the top, but you don't really see her in the beginning of the season, and you can go 3, 4, usually 5 episodes, but no, I would go as far as say usually 4 episodes, not 5. Kylie is kind of a late bloomer, in which you don't see anything of these queens. Then suddenly, out of the blue, they emerge in full front, and from that moment on they become unstoppable. So I am expecting Kylie's edit to continue to rise, and she will be stepping out of the background more and more going forward. And to me, she will take a spot in the top 4 as the trans contestant. Problem is, who is going to be the 4th? Because the 4th, it's really difficult to clock. It could be either Trinity or Jan, because Trinity had a very good edit, but it was kind of an ambivalent edit, and then she started slowly fading in the background. While Jan was successfully triggered the episode before, and now her villain edit is in full force. So both are perfect candidate for that last spot in the top 4, but in order to really knock her down, we need to see what's going to happen to Jan next episode. If they trigger her again, and she gets triggered again, then she is our top 4 villain, which we almost always have in every season of Drag Race, and it's not a good thing. It's really not a good thing, because this season is not doing Jan any favor whatsoever. Now, Pandora keeps fading in the background. At this point, for me, it's too late for her edit to rise. There is no chance whatsoever that she will ever get to the top 4. They fucked her up in Season 2, they fucked her up in All Stars 1, and now they are fucking her up in All Stars 6. At least, I would hope that they will give her a moment to really shine. If you could make Kylie win this challenge, then give Pandora a moment to shine, just one moment. And then you can send her home. I'm happy for the queens who are getting a good edit. I'm happy for the queens who get to change the way they were initially perceived and go, beyond the villain edit that introduced them to the world. But you know, there are also queens like Pandora and Jen who are really getting the short end of the deal. And last we have Eureka. Eureka has a great edit. She is really getting a redemption from season 10, showing, you know, a totally different attitude. Eureka looks like she did a lot of growing. She became really mature. It really looks like it's been 10 years since season 10. That's the difference that I perceive when I see Eureka in Ostase, and that's a good thing. But unfortunately, as far as representation spots go, there is simply no comparison with Ginger. And it's not just a matter of professionalism, it's also the fact that they slept on Eureka. There were opportunities to actually give her a win, and she didn't get it. So for me, at this point, there is really no doubt. For me, she has no chance to be in the top 4. Now, will any returning queen possibly get to the top 4? For me, no, because you know how I watch Drag Race, how I make my statistics about Drag Race. It never happened. And I think in a way it never really happened for a reason, because if you're gone for 5 episodes, you know, people are not going to be so keen on the idea that you will end up in the top 3 or top 4 depending on the season when you have been away for 5 episodes. This is something that I completely understand, and I think the main reason why we never had a returning queen that actually got to the top 4. So for me, I never said it before, but from the you know, from the speculations that I've always done at the end of every review, I think that you kind of got that. For me, no returning queen has a chance on the top 4. I'm not even considering the possibility. Best case scenario, she will go home immediately. Like, best. I'm sorry, but this is, you know, this is what I think is going to happen. And that was all for this episode. As usual, a very special thanks to our patrons for supporting the channel. I don't know how long we will keep being on Patreon because, as you know, we received some false copyright claims that are claiming that the chop is piracy. It's like fair use doesn't even exist anymore. We still don't know who is behind this, but we will discuss our situation and what happened already to Akeria and Jordan T on Wednesday night with a special guest star, Wilma Fingerdo. So stay tuned, turn up the notifications, and I'll see you soon. Have a great week.